Welcome to Can I Have the Recipe? When you come to Can I Have the recipe you're going to get is the one that the friend of a friend of a friend gave us, the one that we've worked on over the years. Imagine going to somebody's house and having a meal and saying, oh my God, I have to have this recipe. We've sort of honed those down, and they're the best of the best recipes. And they've taken years to collect, although we're still getting new ones in every single day. So when you come here, you're going to get those recipes. Today we're going to be making pork tenderloin cutlets with caramelized onions and a mustard sauce, which is really easy to put together. Do yourself a favor and prep everything first. So I'll run through the ingredients that we've got. We have 6 cloves of garlic that we've sliced, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of white wine vinegar, 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, 3 tablespoons of spicy brown mustard, 1 onion sliced, 5 tablespoons of chicken broth, and about a pound to a pound and a half pork tenderloin that I've already sliced into about 1/2 inch thick pieces. You want to get them all pretty close to the same width so they'll cook at the same time, but you can make some adjustments while you're cooking. And in the skillet, we've got 8 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. So we're going to get the heat going on that first, and this will take a few minutes. But what we're going to do is we're going to saute this garlic, and that's going to be the base for everything else that we do. We don't want to do too much. We just want it to start to turn golden. And what it's going to do is it's going to infuse the garlic flavor into this olive oil, which sets a really great foundation of flavor for everything else. You can see some of the smaller pieces are already starting to turn brown. So I'm going to lower the heat. We want it golden, but we just don't want it too done. I'm going to turn that off and just let the heat of the oil kind of continue to cook, but I definitely want to turn the temperature off for a minute. Okay, we're done with the garlic, and what we're going to do now is we're going to put it into a bowl, and we're going to add some other ingredients to it. So this is hot, so you have to be careful. Okay, so we're going to let that, you can see it's still really hot, so we're going to ignore that for a few minutes and let it cool down, and then we're going to be adding some other ingredients to it. So this was a recipe actually clipped out of a magazine that was under something that caught my attention, which is 30-minute meals. Over the years I've sort of tweaked. I followed the recipe the first time and it was great, but we made it some adjustments. It didn't have enough sauce to it, so we increased the volume on almost all the ingredients, toned down a couple of other things, and it's just kind of perfected itself over the years. Okay, so we're on to the next step. The garlic and the olive oil has had a chance to cool down just a little bit, and what I've done is I've taken 3 tablespoons of the olive oil out of the garlic, and I'm setting it aside because that garlic infused olive oil is what we're going to use to saute the pork, and then later on the onions. So what we have is we have the remaining olive oil here with all that golden garlic in it, and what we're going to do is whisk a few other ingredients in. So we are going to start with the chicken broth, and that's 5 tablespoons of chicken broth, and 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, two tablespoons of white wine vinegar, 2 teaspoons of dried thyme. Originally the recipe called for fresh thyme, but I found that using dried thyme just gives it a little bit more zip. The flavor of the dried herbs is always a little bit more intense. And then we're going to finish up with 2 tablespoons of spicy brown mustard. Okay, so we've got that whisked together and we're going to set that aside. Now we're going to go back and saute the pork. Cooking in this kitchen is a little bit of a challenge. This house was built in 1902, before there was indoor plumbing. And it's a propane stove. This particular stove doesn't have the heat of a commercial oven, a commercial stove, so we do the best we can. So what I've done is I've added about half that oil. We're going to cook the pork in 2 batches. One of the things that's really important to remember is not to crowd the meat. So we've got this up. We're waiting for this oil to heat up.
They're probably wondering who the voice is that's talking. I'm David. I'm the videographer slash Sarah's husband.
Slash taster.
Slash taster. That's right. And she couldn't be more right about the house here. It's an old farmhouse, literally an old farmhouse, and up in the western part of Colorado. And we have an incredible view of the mountains right out through our window. We love living here. However, cooking in this kitchen actually has its limitations.
And days like today we're snowed in, which is a perfect day to cook. Yeah. You'll notice the oil's a little bit off too, because the floors are kind of crooked, which means the stove is kind of crooked, which means there's always a lot of balancing going on. And I'm just messing with this. I'm putting half the pork in. Again, we don't want to crowd it. Oh, that's probably good.
What's the purpose of not crowding it?
So it heats evenly. It doesn't get too moist. What will happen if you put too much meat in the pan is it'll end up steaming itself, and it won't get a nice crisp. It won't brown nicely, and what happens is the moisture from the meat ends up just kind of steaming the rest of it. You want it to brown. You don't want it to poach. I should also mention that it's important after you slice the pork tenderloin, you want to pat it dry with a paper towel, because you always want to start with meat that's been dried off. You don't want an excessive amount of moisture. Okay, we're about ready to turn this over.
So how do you know when it's ready to turn over?
You can see that the color starts to change. It's still red on the top, but you can see that it's cooking, and you can also just turn it over and see that it's nice and getting golden brown.
So you just want that nice golden brown.
Think of something that you want to eat. So when it starts looking like something you want to put in your mouth, then that'll be an indicator. Okay, we're just going to let this finish on this side, and then we're going to do the second batch. We are on the second batch of pork, and you can see it's browned. So what we've done with the first batch is we're just transferring it to a tray and keeping it tinted with foil to keep it warm. But it's going to get heated up again anyway. So we're just going to let this rest for a little while and move on to the next step. We've got a little bit of extra oil in there, and you can see that there's some brown bits from the pork left over, and we're going to keep those in there because it's going to add flavor. And now we have 1 onion that I've sliced, and we're going to just saute that. I'm going to start out on high and then lower the temperature in a little bit. And this takes a while because we want it to get nice and golden brown. So we're just going to let these onions cook down. As these are browning a little bit, you can kind of see that they've released some moisture and picked up all the little brown bits that the pork left in the bottom of the pan. And what we're going to do now, just to let them continue cooking, is we're going to cover them. And that'll keep them nice and moist.
And what are you doing with the heat?
I've got it on about a medium right now, and it's good. They're going to go for between 4 and 6 minutes, depending on how your stove is. We're almost where we want the onions to be. You can see that they're nice. They've gotten nice and brown, and they're really limp, but we're still going to keep cooking them a little bit longer. I just want to add a little salt and pepper, and we're going to throw in about a half a teaspoon of salt and a couple of grinds of pepper. You can always add more. I always like to be conscious of people that are on low salt diets because you can always add more salt. Okay, now we're just about ready. We're going to leave these in the pan and crank up the heat a little bit. Oh, I wish you could smell this.
It's amazing. Now, no, is it important to explain that while this has been cooking, you've been lifting the lid every once in a while?
Every couple of minutes, I just give it a quick check. There's a lot of room for error with onions like this too, unless they burn. Okay, this is the infusion, the oil infusion with the herbs, the sugar, the vinegar that we added before. So now we're just going to add this.
Ooh. Oh, the aroma.
You can smell the mustard.
That's incredible.
It's a nice combination. There's a little bit of acid with that white wine vinegar and the mustard, and then you've got the brown sugar, and that rounds it out. So we're just going to let that cook down a little bit until it thickens up. And we're going to put this over the pork cutlets, and we're in for a delightful dinner. You can see how this is reduced and thickened up, and it's gotten a nice golden brown. The flavors have all mellowed a little bit, so we're going to turn this off. And while that was cooking, I plated up the pork, and we're just going to spoon this onion mixture over. And you've got some options when it comes to serving this. I like to do it over mashed potatoes or along with mashed potatoes, but basically you can put it over a baked potato, you can do pasta, you can do rice, whatever is your personal taste.
I'm telling you, it's a hard time for me holding this camera.
And you can see those lovely little bits of garlic in there that have gotten nice and soft and really infused everything with that garlic flavor. So between the garlic and the onions and the mustard, it's just a wonderful blend.
Wow.
And one of the benefits of being the cameraman is that you get to be the first one to taste it. Here's the first taste.
Okay, so what we're cooking today is Mike Gwynn's famous chorizo and cheese enchiladas. And what I have done is I have preheated the oven to 375. I've prepared this hot oil pan for cooking the tortillas, and then I will dip them in this, and I prefer the Las Palmas enchilada sauce. Very tasty and good.
Red? Is that a red
It's
sauce?
red. It's a red sauce. And then in this bowl here, I pre-cooked the chorizo, which is Mexican pork sausage. And in this bowl, I have mixed the cilantro, the green onions, and I roasted a jalapeno and an Anaheim chili on the barbecue and mixed those in. So we're going to go ahead and blend all this together with the cilantro, the chorizo.
Is it important to pre-cook the chorizo?
Well, you want to pre-cook it so it's cool because you don't want to blend it in with all the cheese. And this is some Mexican cheese, and this is some mild cheddar, and we'll leave a little to sprinkle on top. So we take our hands, we just mix all these ingredients together. The chorizo, the cilantro, plenty of cilantro, green onions, roasted jalapeno and Anaheim chili. Okay, so then we have our ingredients right there. What we do is we take these corn tortillas and we fry them a little bit in the oil, and you poke them a little bit so it doesn't balloon up when you're cooking it.
How high is the heat on this?
Very low.
Okay.
It's like around 2 on the gas oven. So we just lightly coat it with oil on both sides, getting it kind of saturated with the oil.
Do you want them to brown?
No.
Okay.
No, you just want them to get kind of soft and with the oil on them. And then you put them in the Las Palmas in the red enchilada sauce. Okay, and you want to keep them so they're soft. Okay, then we take this tortilla, we put it in the pan, we take our ingredients, we stuff the tortilla with the ingredients, roll it up, and I pre-grease the pan so that these don't stick. Then we're going to take a little bit of sour cream and spread it right on the top. And then we leave it there and we just keep rolling. Fry the tortilla lightly, poke it so that the air gets out. Flip it so it's still soft. Soak it with the oil. Otherwise the tortillas are too dry. If you just do them without dipping them in the sauce and the oil. Take it out, put it next to this one. Take your ingredients. Stuff the enchilada. Cover it with a little sour cream and continue on. Okay.
Okay, so you just keep repeating this process?
Yeah, it just keeps repeating the process, and you keep mixing this up so you're getting all the ingredients in here, the cilantro, the cheese, and you want to, you don't want these to be flimsy. You want to be fat, and so you want to roll them so that
So you're really packing them.
Yeah, packing them in, and then you push them kind of against each other so you can keep filling this up. For it's going to go into an oven at 375 and cook for about 45 minutes, and then when you bring it out, you let it cool so that you're not just trying to dish up a bunch of goo. You're dishing up the partially formed enchiladas.
So where did you get the recipe for this?
Well, I made up this recipe, but it's well known that corn tortillas make the best enchiladas. And it was my idea to add the chorizo just to flavor up and make the enchiladas more hearty rather than just cheese enchiladas, just stuffing cheese in them. And I mean, all the spices that are in chorizo and in the enchilada sauce and everything are typical spices that you would find in Mexican-American dishes. Mexican dishes are not specifically like what we have, put together in our country to typify Mexican food. So now we're starting 9, 10, 11, 12.
Ah, you're going to go all the way around.
Yeah, we go around the sides, see?
Okay.
You stuff this one in, and then what you do is you roll it carefully, like that, so you don't break the tortillas, kind of keep the integrity of the tortilla. And don't worry about getting messy. If you don't get messy, man, you ain't cooking. Yeah. Okay, this is the final ingredients. We've got all our enchilada in here. Now we take some of our Las Palmas enchilada sauce. I'm going to shake this up because it's been sitting around. We want to get all that good red tomato. Whoop, spill a little, doesn't matter. You don't want to put too much on because you don't want these to get all soupy. So you put that much on, clean up a little bit, and we're going to take the rest of the ingredients and we're going to just sprinkle them over the top like this.
So that's going to get all melty now.
Oh, is it ever. And then I had preheated the oven to 375. So we will take the enchiladas in this Pyrex dish.
And you don't need to cover it.
Don't need to cover it, don't want to cover it. Put it in the oven, 45 minutes at 375. And there you have it. Mike's Chorizo and Cheese Enchiladas Suprema. And here is your finished product.
Ooh.
Oh, Mike Gwynn's famous cheese and chorizo enchiladas. And now, very important, you got to sit and let this cool for at least 5 minutes. Otherwise, you're going to get a goopy, soupy kind of thing coming out, and you want this to maintain its integrity and its form when you put it on the plate. So we will let this cool for 5 minutes, and then we will enjoy a small sampling thereof. So the baking dish is still hot, so what I want to do is take a butter knife and see, I'll go around the edge and kind of loosen up the final product.
Can't wait to taste this.
So here you have it.
The smell has been driving me crazy. Oh my God. That's amazing.
A stunning success for our endeavors.
I can't talk. Welcome to Can I Have the Recipe? When you come to Can I Have the recipe you're going to get is the one that the friend of a friend of a friend gave us, the one that we've worked on over the years. Imagine going to somebody's house and having a meal and saying, oh my God, I have to have this recipe. We've sort of honed those down, and they're the best of the best recipes. And they've taken years to collect, although we're still getting new ones in every single day. So when you come here, you're going to get those recipes. Let's get started on these slow cooker ribs. Okay, what we're going to start with, we've got a rack of pork ribs, and we prefer baby back ribs, but you can use whatever you like. So I've cut them into sections because they are going to go in the slow cooker. So we've sectioned them off so they'll fit, and what we're going to do first is we're going to just cover them, and this is going to be both sides. We're going to do salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder.
Now I want to say something, Sarah. I heard you mention about the garlic powder. It's important where it's from.
Yes, I just sent you to the store to get more garlic powder because we go through lots of garlic powder in this house. I just wanted to mention that when you're buying garlic powder, always look for organic or California. If you don't, and you get the stuff that's on sale in the big, huge jars, it might taste okay, but 9 times out of 10, it comes from China, and it's not always the best choice. You want to make sure you know what you're getting, so opt for California garlic powder or organic. Okay, so we've dusted the ribs with salt, pepper, and I really didn't do enough of that, so we want to do a little bit more pepper and some more salt. And then we're just going to pat brown sugar on these. And I'm not measuring any of this stuff, but we'll just do one, and then we're going to turn it over, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to give it some salt. And you know what? You can always add more. I always like to be kind of easy. I'm easy with the salt, not so easy with the garlic powder. And we're just going to cover this. And a lot of it's going to fall off. Okay, so we've got both sides of this that have been dusted with garlic powder onion powder, salt and pepper, and I've pressed on some brown sugar. And we're going to do this to all 4 pieces, or however many you have, and then we're going to lay those in the crock pot. We've got these all covered with salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and brown sugar. We've got that on both sides, and we're laying them in the bottom of the crock pot, which is set on low. And actually, just for good measure, I'm going to dump the rest of the sugar in there. And then we are going to cover that with a 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1/3 cup of soy sauce, and 2 tablespoons of liquid smoke. We're going to cover it, and we're going to forget about it for the next 6 hours. We just put our ribs in the crock pot, and since we have some time to kill, we're going to make some homemade barbecue sauce to go with those ribs. And this is a Carolina honey sauce, which means it's going to be sweet and tangy and have a little bit of heat to it. I'm going to start out with just a small amount of heat, and you can add pepper flakes, or you can certainly increase that if you've got a stronger taste bud. So right now we're starting with 1 cup of ketchup in the bottom of a medium saucepan, and we are going to add to that 1 cup of apple cider vinegar. So we just kind of want to mix this up. And then we're going to add to this, this is combined 1/2 cup molasses and 1/2 cup honey. That's going to give it that sweetness. The molasses is going to give it a little bit more depth of flavor. And then we have a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. We've got this over a medium-high heat. What we're going to be doing is bringing this up to a slow boil. And we just have a teaspoon of liquid smoke. And a 1/4 teaspoon of, I'm using sriracha, but you can use the hot sauce of your choice. Either Tabasco or sriracha or any other hot sauce that you like. And again, if you'd like to make it a little hotter, you can add red pepper flakes. That'll give it a boost. So we've brought this to a boil, and we're just going to let it go to a full rolling boil. And you can see it's still kind of thin. So we're going to lower the temperature and simmer it uncovered for about 30 minutes, and it'll thicken up. It's not going to get super, super thick, but it'll thicken up a lot more than it is now. And this is a very easy recipe to do, and I think one of the beauties of doing this recipe instead of buying bottled barbecue sauce is you saw exactly what went in here. There's not a lot of garbage, there's not a lot of high fructose corn syrup or artificial flavors, and you really have control over how hot it gets, how spicy you make it. So that's one of my favorite reasons for making homemade barbecue sauce. And we're just going to let that simmer. So we've gotten the ribs out of the crock pot. They're done, and I have been covering them with the barbecue sauce that's had a chance to cool. And you can see as it cooled, it thickened up quite a bit. So what we're doing is we're going to cover each side very, very liberally with the barbecue sauce. And then our part is done because they're going to go outside to the grill with David.
And you're doing it on both sides, right?
I'm covering it on both sides. Another thing I should have mentioned is that these cooked on low in my crock pot for 6 hours. You might want to check them depending, everybody's temperature is different, everything operates, we're up at a very, very high elevation. So you might want to check in about 5 hours and just make sure that they're not overdone or completely falling apart.
and sent to me a stroke of love called you. One in a million you. A one in a million you.